Before we get into this, I love King of the Hill, but absolutely no show is perfect, and King of the Hill is no exception. But the thing is, with King of the Hill, there's only maybe 2 or 3 bad episodes. While I may not die of laughter at every episode, at least I'm interested in said episode. I'm having fun. I like what's going on. You know what I mean? I may not chuckle, but I'm entertained. But I'm going to say maybe there's 2 episodes, like I said, maybe 3. I'd have to watch that third one to make sure, but there's 2 episodes that I just cannot stand watching, and I always skip it, or I just won't watch it when it was airing on TV after I saw it the first time. But out of the 2, I believe I chose the worst, and I'll show you the exact spot which made me decide this was the worst episode. Now, without any further ado, let's get started. Our episode opens on Hank, Bill, Boomhauer, and Dale standing in the alley like they normally do. Hank is saying that there's no more mistletoe because of last year's unfortunate kissing accident.
Peppermint schnapps makes me sloppy.
Me too, Bill. Me too. I'm kidding. I don't drink, but if I did, it would probably make me sloppy. And this starts our B-plot. Dale is racking his brain on what to get Nancy for Christmas.
New Dale in repose. Tasteful, yet you can see everything.
No, Dale. Just no. And here she is, the devil herself, Mrs. Wakefield. Don't let the act fool you. She is evil incarnate. But seriously though, I want you to look at this scene right here. It shows how much of a good guy Hank is. He saw a person struggling to get out of their car and rushes over to help her. Notice how none of the others rushed over to help her. Remember that for later on in the video. She explains why she's darkening Hank's door. She used to live here many years ago with her twin sister. Oh god, there are 2 of them? She even planted that giant tree in Hank's yard. But before she could finish taking Hank's soul, Peggy, his wife, Bobby, his son, show up to go Christmas tree shopping. Oh, this is a Christmas episode. I don't know when this is going out, but close enough. Hank, again showing how much of a nice guy he is, invites her to dinner and offers to give her a tour of the house to see what's changed.
The kitchen sink now has a garbage disposal.
Oh dude, sweet, garbage disposals, awesome. And she drives off, hopefully to never be seen again. But unfortunately, we know she'll return.
She's a twin.
Come on, Bill. She's like 80. Peggy is not happy that Hank invited Mrs. Wakefield over for dinner.
That's like putting out a saucer of milk for a stray cat.
She's right, you know, and that's such a weird thing to say when it comes to Peggy. But in this case, yeah, she nailed it, and I agree with her. While the conversation is going on, Bobby is left there to solve for his life, and he's making very little progress. Damn, Peggy, did Bobby even need to saw that tree? Bobby's so relatable, he's just happy to be done. That kid is adverse to physical labor. And we're at the dinner, and unfortunately she is back. But also, Hank gets to show off his sweet garbage disposal. Mrs. Wakefield tells Hank a story about how she lost a promise ring down the drain, leading Bobby to tell a story of his own about how he lost a toenail and how it grew back really gross. Hank tells him to keep his shoes on, and thank you, Hank. Small things like that do crawl my skin. Plus, I did lose one of my toenails during a crazy jumping into a car situation. Maybe for another video, but not for this channel. And the she-demon actually tells Bobby something kind of nice here, that story of his is going to be a memory and that he should treasure it. Yeah, I agree. As I do get older, I do treasure the memories I make more and more. But Peggy wants her out of here. And again, it's weird to say, but I'm on Peggy's side. Usually I can't stand her. I like her, but I can't stand Peggy. Hell, Peggy even goes so far to say that they're out of coffee.
Now I can't wait to get old and wrinkly and grow a little hump on my back.
Oh, never change, Luann, you ball of sunshine. Even though I do know she changes when she gets, you know, exploded at a megalomart. And now we come to Peggy. Mrs. Wakefield says that Peggy reminds her of her sister. Peggy's having none of this. Do it, Peggy. Throw her out of the house.
So smart and pretty.
Well, thank you.
Oh yeah, I forgot that it doesn't take much to get Peggy to like you. All you need to do is kiss her arse a bit and she will love you. Oh look, she even finds a new can of coffee. Great, that's the entire family that this demon has taken over. And back to the B-plot. Dale gets the idea to ship himself to Nancy. I don't see how that's going to be a good present, but okay Dale, you do you. Bill, with a really good idea, comes and says why doesn't he just take his wife to a nice countryside bed and breakfast? But Dale says no, because he's not the type of person to sleep in other people's filth. He's the type who charges people to do that. Boomhauer does not approve. We are now past the dinner and on to the tour of the house. And for some reason, Bobby gets it in his head to tell a story about how he dressed him and Ladybird, his dog, as Calvin Klein models in underwear. That boy ain't right. No, yeah, that's the appropriate response to that. But then, Mrs. Wakefield counters with her own awkward story of her own, about how this is the room where her sister ceased to be.
Good lord.
Personally, I don't get this kind of response. When you hear that someone has ceased to be in a room of your house, someone has ceased to be everywhere where you've been. You know, that Starbucks, that McDonald's, in your house, you know what I mean? Everyone's been not alive somewhere. In a bit of good news, she didn't wrap things up in the room. Technically, she had a heart attack, crawled out of the room into the hallway with her arthritic hands, and then ceased to be. So, Bobby, it's not in your room. That's kind of cool, right? After all of that awkwardness, Mrs. Wakefield takes a nap on their chair, but she's starting to overstay her welcome. Hank goes to gently wake her up, but Peggy is again having none of it, and makes sure she wakes up.
Hey! What's going on?
I can't believe I'm really liking Peggy this episode. She's usually not too high on my list of favorite characters. But Mrs. Wakefield says this.
Oh, I'm still here.
She said that in such a weird way. Hank asks if she's ready to head on home, and she replies to that question in a weird way again.
Yes, I am. I am ready.
Wakefield tells him that there's no place in the world she'd rather end her days here. She even clarifies to Hank and Peggy what she means by ends her days here. She means to bite the big one, go to sleep forever, finito. Honestly, yeah, that's the proper reaction to that one too. I would have been shocked that someone wants to kick the bucket in my home, and I wouldn't like it.
I promise not to be a nuisance.
Oh, well, I mean, she promises that she won't be a nuisance, which is not true. What happens when she ceases to be? Are you going to put that burden on Hank and his family, or is it's going to be traumatizing to his family? He's going to have to call the police, explain what happened, and also this close to Christmas? Like, holy hell, why would you put that on someone? Like that, no matter what, she's going to be a bother and a nuisance, because you have to explain why some random person who you don't know is ceasing to be in your house. And will they even believe that story? Oh, and she just wanted to end it there, where she grew up and where she's the most happiest? I'm sorry, but Mrs. Wakefield is such an unlikable character. And Hank rightfully tells her no, she can't do that in his house, and that she's not being a good guest. Mrs. Wakefield does not like that answer. She is just so self-centered, not thinking about how her actions are going to affect those people that she just met. Peggy tells Mrs. Wakefield that they called her a taxi and she needs to get out. And Mrs. Wakefield makes a run for it. She hides behind the tree, trying to hit Hank with her walker. She is now trespassing in their home, and is, the word that starts with alting the owner of the home with her walker. She tells him while doing all of this that it'll only take her 2, maybe 3 days to wrap things up. Like, that's going to make Hank say yes. That makes you look even more crazy.
You keep her busy. I'll sneak up from behind and poke her with this driver.
Peggy, you're awesome. But before Peggy can enact her plan, Mrs. Wakefield books it again, this time to the bathroom, and nearly walks in on Bobby taking a bath.
Hey, I'm in here!
Hank tells her that she needs to leave and begins to try prying her away from the door, where Bobby is still taking his bath. And this ghoul starts punching and kicking Hank in his own home while he's still trying to be really nice to her. I'm pretty sure most people would have been cussing her out and throwing her out the front door by now. I know I would have. And we get a little bit more from the B story. Dale still can't figure out what to get Nancy for Christmas. Hank finally gets her and starts to get rid of this cretinous crone, and shoves her into a taxi, hopefully to never be seen again.
Why are you picking on that old lady, Shug?
First of all, shut up, Nancy. You don't get to judge anyone, you cheating ass hoe. Hank tells them what's going on and what this woman is trying to do. And after telling them what she's been trying to do, they just stare at him like they don't understand what he's telling them. The cab finally starts to drive away. I feel so bad for that poor taxi driver. She's going to probably steal his soul. Hank looks back to his friends. His friends, which he's known for a long time, and these idiots do this. Seriously, this part. This is the part right here. It's what makes me despise this episode, except for Con. These are people that Hank has grown up with. He's been to high school with Dale, Bill, and Boomhauer, and Nancy's known them for a long time too. They just judge Hank like this. They know Hank's a good and reliable dude. There's no reason for him to be mean and picking on an old woman for, like I said, no reason. Anyone who's known someone for that long would have been like, hey, what's going on? But these idiots just judge Hank, and that's why I hate this episode, because of how stupid everyone is, except for Hank and Peggy, and maybe Con. Con's a prick. But the next day, Hank tells the guys what happened, and this gives Dale an idea to have a haunted bed and breakfast. Dale begs Hank to let Mrs. Wakefield be deceased in his home so he can have her haunting his bed and breakfast, which I don't think that's how that works. I don't think he could just tell her to go do that over there. Hank puts his foot down and tells Dale that no one is wrapping things up in either of their homes.
I'll probably die in my house, wedged behind the bathroom door, inaccessible to the paramedics.
Christ, Bill, that was haunting. Please let the King of the Hill, I don't know what, a reboot, continuation, I think it's a continuation. I guess it's coming soon. But please, give that man a woman. Give some happiness to Bill. He needs it. Hank and his family are now hanging up Christmas decorations. And Hank actually starts to feel bad about rejecting Mrs. Wakefield's request, which I assume is coming from all the people judging him. Again, they should understand where Hank's coming from. That's an interesting nativity scene. I don't believe there are any giraffes. Were there? But Peggy likes it. She even wants to add a zebra. The doorbell starts ringing. I sense evil. No, sadly, Hank doesn't slam the door in her face. He should have, though. She says she's came to apologize about the other night, and she hopes Hank isn't angry with her. That's a goddamn trap, and you know it. But Hank, being the good guy that he is, sees the good in people and drops his guard and lets her come inside. Well, he's about to let her come inside the house to use the bathroom. Oh, see, right here, there's the trap. She's a trap. She's tricking him. She's evil. But Hank sees through her obvious lie, which I think anybody would with that giant smirk that she did right in front of him, and he picks her up and carries her away from his house. Apparently, Mrs. Wakefield is the Flash because somehow she's able to catch up with Hank, a healthy grown male, and she's able to jam the wheel of her walker between a door. And the show still wants me to feel bad for this woman who is terrorizing this family. She then pleads with Hank to let her do it and that she'll slip away real quick. Hank gives her his answer. And now, after all of that, Mrs. Wakefield starts to commit property damage. But before she can do more damage to the home, someone taps her on the shoulder. It's Dale, and he has a proposition for her, and he'll give her a free plate of pitted prunes. Personally, I actually think that's a pretty sweet deal. Dale takes her to his office basement where he proceeds to pitch his haunted bread and breakfast idea to her. All she has to do is make a couple of appearances in this antique mirror when she's gone. I love Dale. He's my favorite character for a reason. Mrs. Wakefield tells Dale hell no. She only wants to go in Hank's house. Thinking they've finally gotten rid of Mrs. Wakefield, Hank and Peggy go to the mall to shop for Bobby's Christmas presents, leaving Bobby at home alone because he always peeks at the presents when they go out to buy them. Before they leave for the mall, Hank closes the door and tells Bobby to keep everything locked, which is something that everyone should be doing no matter what. I don't get people who leave their house doors open, their car doors, anything like that. Aren't you worried about people robbing you? I don't care how safe your area is, it just takes one person to wander into that area who doesn't live there to start robbing you guys. I will never get it. I have a family who will leave their door open because it's safe. I reiterate, I just don't get it. And suddenly, this goes from an episode of a crazy lady trying to stalk a family to a full-blown horror movie. This scene is basically out of Scream. Bobby's on the phone talking to a friend, and the killer's outside the window watching him while he's on the phone. Bobby then books it out of his room. I think this is the fastest Bobby's ever ran in his life. We don't know what happened to Bobby yet because we cut to a scene of Hank and Peggy at the mall. They are approached by John Redcorn, another person who needs to shut the hell up. My problem with him is the same as Nancy. He's the one Nancy's cheating with. He tells Hank and Peggy that it would be an honor to have an elder pass away at their home. I'm starting to get really sick of people telling Hank and Peggy what to do, especially when they're not around to see how this woman has been acting. Hank gets a call from a scared Bobby. Apparently, the call is coming from inside the house. But no, seriously, Bobby tells Hank that somehow Mrs. Wakefield, the woman who's using a walker, who can barely walk, was somehow able to get on top of the roof, giving more proof to my theory that she's a demon. Peggy and Hank then rush home to look for Bobby, terrified, wondering what Mrs. Wakefield did to their son. But luckily, Bobby's fine. He was hiding behind the Christmas tree with a golf club. He is a lot like his mother. Good thing she wasn't able to get in, but this woman is insane. She's tried sticking her hand through the mail slot to unlock the door. Hank, rightfully pissed off because Mrs. Wakefield has been terrifying his family, he goes outside and shouts to Mrs. Wakefield to show herself. The creature known as Wakefield emerges from the shadows, and Hank goes to face her. And she leaves Hank no choice. He proceeds to call the police, which honestly should have happened a lot sooner. But again, Hank is a bloody saint. The police finally arrive, and Hank points out that Mrs. Wakefield is the trespasser he was talking about. And the cops do something that happens a lot in King of the Hill. I also think this happens in my second most hated episode, again, with the cops. Again, it's with the cops in that episode, where they're called on someone, but they look harmless, so they give Hank a hard time. It's very frustrating, but there are a lot of jerks in the world of King of the Hill. Con, being the prick that he is, berates Hank about calling the police on a frail old lady. Out of all of the characters, Con is the only one I'd be fine with doing this, but Con is just a jerk through the entire show. But I don't expect Hank's friends to be doing this sort of thing to Hank. Even after all of this, Hank, the good person that he is, doesn't even want her arrested. He just wants her taken away so he can get on with his life. And Bill just blurts something out.
Well, maybe you could compromise with her.
Hank asks, how, Bill? How is he supposed to compromise with someone who wants to end themselves in his house?
Let her die on my sidewalk?
I mean, I guess it's better than her doing it in your home, but still really uncomfortable. Here's Bill's rebuttal.
I'm just saying.
You're not saying anything.
Still.
There's another episode where Bill gets annoying like this. This wasn't too bad here because it's just this quick scene, but there's a whole episode where he acts like this. I might have to cover it. Hank makes a good point here. He tells them that if she was doing this to them, trying to break into their homes and end herself there, they'd be reacting the exact same way. Well, maybe except for Bale. He seems to be into it. It's easy for them to judge Hank because they're not seeing the hell he's going through.
What have I done wrong?
Absolutely nothing.
Oh, shut up, you bloody ghoul. And after all of that, Hank and his friends are in the alley drinking again. They've started giving him crap about what's going on with Mrs. Wakefield. Seriously, he's explained it to these people and they still don't get it. This is why I hate this episode. I don't see people who have been Hank's friends for years, grown up with him, seeing him as this bad person, because they should know better. They know Hank's character, and it feels a bit like a horror movie, where the characters are dumb on purpose because they need to advance the story. Peggy comes out of the house to show Hank the obituaries, and that Mrs. Wakefield has finally passed on. And you know what I say? Good. I'm glad she's gone. F you, Mrs. Wakefield. Hank, actually being the good person that he is, feels sad about what happened to Mrs. Wakefield. They contemplate even having their Christmas party anymore because of how bad Mrs. Wakefield has messed everything up for them. But Peggy tells them, yeah, they should have the party. Hank even bounces back and suggests that they should go out and buy a little green vest for their dog, Ladybird. Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cute. As Hank and the family return from their outing, something horrible has happened. Holy hell, the dead walk the earth. I'm kidding, she's not deceased, but now she's inside the house. We now switch back to horror movie mode, and they make a huge mistake that everyone makes in horror movies. They split up to go look for the killer. Well, in this case, the old woman who's trying to wrap things up in their home, but you get what I'm saying. First, we follow Peggy. She takes the garage, and she does a sweep. Everything checks out at first, but suddenly she hears a noise. Peggy looks out. It was just Ladybird. Peggy gets the idea to have Ladybird sniff Mrs. Wakefield's tennis balls on her walker to hunt her down because Ladybird is a pure-blooded Georgia bloodhound, which I don't think Ladybird has ever successfully tracked down anyone in the history of the show. I could be wrong. If you know an episode where she's successful at doing that, let me know in the comments. But yeah, Ladybird ends up just wanting the ball instead of hunting down Mrs. Wakefield. So Peggy's journey was a bust. Next up, Luann and Bobby. They're searching the bedroom. Luann checks under the bed and says this.
Please don't grab me by the throat and drag me into the gates of hell.
I really do love Luann. She's a fun character. And next is Bobby. And holy crap, did he find her? Oh, no, wait. It was just him in the mirror. He scared himself.
Don't tell Dad.
Yeah, I get it. I wouldn't want anyone to know that I scared myself looking into a mirror. And finally, we come to Hank. He's searching the master bedroom. The camera pans around the bedroom. There's something tiny and translucent on the floor outside of the closet. Hank picks it up. It's a peppermint candy wrapper, meaning Mrs. Wakefield is close. We get a nice little horror movie shot of Hank peering into the closet. Hank opens the closet door, looks down at the shoes in the closet, but he notices something is wrong. There's an entire new set of shoes, and feet are in those shoes. He pulls back the clothes in the closet, and we finally see a deceased Mrs. Wakefield. No, wait again, she's still with us, unfortunately. Everyone hears the commotion and comes rushing in. Peggy tells Mrs. Wakefield that they thought she was dead. And again, this demon admits to making a fake obituary to get them to drop their guard so she can come in. This woman is insane. And again, I think this episode really wants us to feel bad for her. I just can't. This is insane. But before they can do anything to her, like, throwing her out the window, the doorbell starts to ring, signifying the beginning of their Christmas party. The guests are starting to show up. Hank sends the rest of the family to deal with the party and the guest. He'll deal with Mrs. Wakefield himself. She threatens to wrap things up right there and begins to hold her breath. For some reason, Hank sings Jingle Bells and that gets her to start breathing again? I don't know. I don't get it. Plus, I don't think you can do that by holding your breath. You'll pass out and then you'll start to breathe automatically again. It looks like the Christmas party is in full swing, and they have a decent amount of guests. Peggy wishes John Redcorn a Merry Christmas and offers him something off the platter. John Redcorn, being the colossal prick that he is, tells Peggy that he wasn't going to come to the party because of how they treated their elders. Again, it's so annoying because these people don't know what they're going through. And seriously, this guy who's looking down on people who doesn't know the whole story is only here because he got Bill as his secret Santa. And apparently, Bill gives really fantastic gifts. He's so materialistic, such a phony. And in another scene that makes Hank look like the bad guy, he's trying to take Mrs. Wakefield out of the house, but she's fighting him tooth and nail. Bill thinks Hank is fighting with Mrs. Wakefield's ghost.
My God, Hank is wrestling with Miss Wakefield's ghost!
Dale is not happy that Hank isn't taking advantage of the situation and profiting off of Mrs. Wakefield's ghost.
What a waste.
Everybody at the party tells Hank to just leave her alone and let her be. Again, these people do not know the whole story, or they don't care, but fine. Even Peggy has to shrug. Well, Hank eventually gives in and puts her down. And get this witch runs behind John Redcorn and hides behind him. Of course she picks him. Like Hank is the bad guy. She's still manipulating people, like she did in the beginning when she complimented Hank on his lawn to get him to drop his guard. Like when she complimented Peggy and acted like she was weak and innocent when the police came and got her. This woman knows what she's doing, and I don't feel bad for her. And Hank goes, you know what? If you want to do it here in my house, do it. He even pours her a cup of lemonade. And she sits down in front of everyone. Hank tells everyone, let's have some fun, while this old woman is trying to wrap things up at their Christmas party. You know, a Christmas party where things are supposed to be fun and happy and jolly. I don't think a corpse is going to help achieve that. And Mrs. Wakefield tries to do just that. She fails at it because she sucks. Oh, now you're all uncomfortable after you have to stay here and see it with your own eyes. Now you feel weirded out by it, but you were so quick to lecture Hank and jump down his throat when he was dealing with all of this. When you guys were prancing around trying to find Christmas presents for your cheating wife and wallowing in self-pity. Yeah, it's awkward. So awkward, huh? Wakefield finally says something that I can agree with. Maybe don't do this right now. It's a Christmas party. You know, time and place for everything. Or maybe you just shouldn't do this in someone's house when they don't want you to do that. But right after that, this crazy lady says maybe she can come back later and do it when they're not entertaining. How about you just don't come back? Oh, Hank, I love you, man, but that's not it. Hank tells her that she doesn't have to come back to wrap things up. She can come back to just visit. How about no, don't come back. I would never let that demon anywhere near me or my family. No show, no, that wouldn't be nice. This is not a good thing or a happy moment. Seriously, I think the show really wants us to feel bad for her. I just don't. She's been terrorizing this family for, what, a few days now? That's not a good person. He has to be the most kindest person in the world, because as this monster gets up to leave, he tells her to wait and to stay, and that he has an extra present that he can give her just in case his boss ever shows up to the party. Which is really sad. Hank really loves his boss and sees him as a father figure, but Buck is also a bit of a jerk. Man, Hank is surrounded by jerks in this world. So, the hideous creature known as Wakefield stays and opens up presents with the family and their friends. I would seriously be reconsidering my friendships with these people because none of them had his back and his family's back. And our episode ends with a nice zoom out shot and we get a cute little image of Ladybird sitting by the sliding door, wiggling her tail. At least it ends with a cute dog. We finally made it to the end of my most hated King of the Hill episode. This is one of the episodes, like I said in the beginning, if I'm rewatching the show, I'll skip it. I think there are, like I said in the beginning, 2 or 3 more episodes where I do that too. But the show has a lot of episodes, and 2 or 3 episodes that I can't stand is not bad. But let's do a quick little rundown. A stranger pulls up to your house, you are nothing but kind and show her around. Treat her well, treat her to dinner, give her a little tour of the house, let her reminisce about the days of yore. The idiots you surround yourself with don't believe you that this person wants to end themselves in your home and they will not leave. Terrorizes your family through the days leading up to Christmas. You get shamed into letting her stay in your home. She manipulates everyone around you to make you look like the bad guy, and she gets exactly what she wants in the end, and she gets to wrap it up in Hank's house. But now, all of those people who are jerks to you now get to see what you're dealing with, and how it's not fun, right? It's not easy to let someone just be deceased in your home. But on top of all of that, she gets to stay there, gets a present, gets to enjoy the party, she gets to come back and keep tormenting this family. On the bright side, we never get to see her again after this episode, so I'm assuming after the party, a portal to hell opened up and she was dragged down to the deepest pits of it. Hey, Velvet here. Thank you so much for sitting through all of this. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say it that way like I was torturing you guys, but hopefully I get better at these. But when I originally started my YouTube channel, this is kind of what I wanted to do. I just didn't know how to do it or have the tools for it. I don't have the mic for it. I'm borrowing one from a nice friend of mine, so that's why it doesn't sound like crap. Or I didn't have the programs to do it. OBS is what's giving me the ability to make this mic not sound like crap and have things going on in the background that you can hear. But still, I don't know how to use these programs well, in my mind, enough to do it. But I think this is what I want my channel to be, where I just talk about animated shows, maybe other things, live action shows. I don't know if I'll keep it separate. Plus, it gives me a nice little excuse to go back and watch things I haven't been able to in a long time, and just sit back and enjoy watching something. I always have to do stuff, and I always have stuff on in the background, but I don't get to really pay full attention to it and enjoy it. But I do plan to do more of these. I don't know if I'm going to cover another King of the Hill episode, because I said there are maybe 2 more that I can't stand. And it's not the pig episode. I love that episode. Maybe I'll do Extreme Ghostbusters. That could be fun. Or maybe a Family Guy or a American Dad episode. There's tons of options. I haven't watched those 2 in a while either, so that might be fun. But tell me if you liked it. Hopefully I can get better at these as we go on. Tell your friends, tell your family. Please subscribe, please like, please comment. You know what to do. People say it all the time. And remember that I'm Velvet.